Do you believe in demons? Or did we just come up with a term to describe people who've completely lost their humanity? The case of Shim Ki-seop makes you wonder, how far can a person go before they become something worse than a demon? Let's delve into the case of Shim Ki-seop from Korea. The sharp sound of a cutter knife scraping against the bathroom tiles echoed through the room. 19-year-old Shim Ki-seop stood there, staring down at the knife in his hand. He glanced at the two cutter knives he had picked up earlier. One was a regular utility knife, the other a heavy-duty industrial blade. Sim got to work. At first, his movements were shaky, awkward. But as time passed, he grew more confident, his hands moving faster, more precisely. His skin, now stained red, didn't seem to bother him anymore. Then his phone buzzed. Sim paused, wiped his hands on his jeans, and checked the screen. It was a message from his friend, B. "What are you doing?" Without much thought, Shim replied casually, "Working on something." But B wasn't satisfied. "What do you mean?" Sim responded with a photo. When B opened it, his hands started shaking. He dropped his phone in shock. Inside the bathtub was a mutilated body. Before he could even process what he was seeing, another message appeared. "I'm working. I'm draining the blood." B didn't know what to think. Was it some kind of sick joke? Maybe a picture from a horror website? But as the minutes ticked by, the horrifying truth began to sink in. This wasn't a joke. It was real. Shim Ki-seop would later become known as the man behind one of the most shocking murder cases in recent memory. The methods he used were eerily similar to those of Oh Won-chun, a convicted murderer known for reducing his victim into 280 pieces. It wasn't long before the media started calling Shim the second Oh Won-chun. Even after everything was uncovered, one question remained unanswered. Why? What makes someone go from ordinary to monstrous? What drives a person to commit such an act without a hint of remorse? Shim Ki-seop's story didn't begin with crime. It began with isolation, failure, and a series of disappointments that eventually shaped his descent into darkness. After dropping out of high school, Sim struggled to find stability. Without a proper education or career path, he survived on part-time jobs, drifting through life with no clear direction. His struggles, however, started long before that. As a child, Shim followed his parents to Iran, where he found himself unable to adjust to an unfamiliar culture and environment. Eventually, in 2003, he returned to Korea alone. In search of a purpose, he dreamed of becoming a musician and dropped out of high school to pursue that ambition. But the reality of life was far harsher than he had imagined. Music didn't bring him success, and after another attempt to re-enroll in school, he found himself facing the same struggles. Once again, he dropped out, reinforcing a cycle of failure that seemed impossible to escape. Living paycheck to paycheck through part-time jobs, Shim Ki-seop found solace in a small circle of acquaintances. One of those acquaintances was Choi, an old friend from middle school who had moved on to university. Unlike Shim, Choi had a more stable life. The two occasionally met up in Pundang, where Sim worked at a local coffee shop. They weren't drinkers, so their nights out consisted of watching DVDs and playing billiards, finding comfort in familiar distractions. One particular night, after spending hours together, the pair checked into a motel at 5:30 a.m. to get some rest. When they finally woke up in the afternoon, Shim Ki-seop's mind drifted to something else. Kim, a 17-year-old girl he had met a few times and exchanged messages with. Kim and Shim Ki-seop shared more than casual conversations. They shared a sense of loneliness, of displacement. Kim's story mirrored his own. She had immigrated to Singapore with her parents, struggled to adjust, and eventually returned to Korea. Just like Shim, she found herself unable to fit in, despite returning to a place that should have felt like home. Life in Korea wasn't any easier for her. Left to fend for herself at an age when she needed support the most, Kim also ended up dropping out of school and living alone, just like Shim. It was through Choi that Shim Gi-seop and Kim met each other. Choi later explained that he had introduced them in the hope that they could provide each other with emotional support, believing that their shared experiences might help them connect and lean on one another. But that connection took a dark turn. What started as two lost souls seeking comfort in each other would soon spiral into something far more sinister, something no one could have predicted. Kim didn't think twice when Shim Gi-seop invited her to an unfamiliar place like a motel. She trusted him. After all, they shared similar struggles, and Choi, a mutual friend, was there as well. There was no reason to suspect anything. She arrived at the motel room without hesitation, settling in comfortably as they watched TV together. The atmosphere was casual, just three young people passing the time. But by 4 p.m., things started to take a turn. Shim Gi-seop suggested they leave for the hospital. Choi needed treatment for his conjunctivitis, and Shim offered to accompany him. Kim decided to stay behind, relaxing in the motel room, unaware of what was about to happen. While accompanying Choi to the clinic, Shim Gi-seop made an unexpected detour to a nearby supermarket. There, he purchased two cutter knives, one with a standard 10cm utility knife, the other a larger 14cm industrial-grade cutter knife. Choi didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe Shim needed them for his part-time job or some personal reason. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Once Choi's treatment was done, they returned to the motel and everything appeared normal. But the night was far from over. At 7:24 p.m., Choi left the motel for another engagement, leaving Kim alone with Shim Gi-seop. That's when the situation took a terrifying turn. Shim Gi-seop, without warning, grabbed the cutter knife he had bought earlier and threatened Kim while she was sitting on the bed. His intent was clear. He attempted to assault her. However, fate intervened. At 7:39 p.m., Choi unexpectedly returned to the motel to retrieve a phone he had forgotten. This brief moment of intrusion forced Shim to stop his attack. Kim must have felt a fleeting sense of relief, a chance to escape. But it didn't last. When Choi left the motel again at 7:46 p.m., the opportunity for rescue disappeared. Kim, sensing the danger, attempted to send a message via Talk. But Shim was faster. He snatched her phone before she could call for help. As panic set in, she tried to run, screaming for help. Shim Gi-seop acted swiftly, covering her mouth with his hand, pushing her down and overpowering her. Within moments, he strangled her to death. But his actions didn't stop there. Following the murder, Shim Gi-seop proceeded to dismember Kim's body with the same cutter knives he had purchased earlier. What followed was a meticulous and horrifying process that demonstrated his calculated and emotionless nature. But perhaps what was most disturbing was what he did next. Shortly after the crime, Shim posted a chilling message on Kakao Story, a social media platform popular at the time. "I no longer have any emotions that a human should feel. Today, I did not feel guilt, sadness, or anger. Only a small smile greeted me. Tonight, I will sleep enveloped in the smell of blood." It was a confession hidden in plain sight. Although his social media accounts were later deleted by administrators, the message had already been captured by users and shared widely, ensuring that his words and his crime would never be forgotten. Even today, the remnants of this disturbing confession can still be found online, serving as a chilling reminder of the horror that unfolded in that motel room. Shim Gi-seop's actions and words painted a disturbing picture of a man devoid of normal human emotions. His chilling words, "I will sleep in the smell of blood," drew comparisons to some of South Korea's most infamous serial killers like Yoo Young-chul and Kang Ho-sun. The cold detachment in his writing led many to believe that he was a psychopath, incapable of experiencing empathy or remorse. The crime itself further supported this theory. After strangling Kim to death, Shin Gi-sub placed her body in the motel's bathtub and began draining the blood to reduce the weight of the corpse. Piece by piece, he began the process of dismemberment. Shim had come prepared with 2 cutter knives, anticipating that one might break. And when the larger 14-centimeter industrial cutter knife did snap, he simply walked to a nearby convenience store to purchase a replacement, showing no signs of distress or urgency. His calm demeanor throughout the process was chilling. Even after receiving a message from Choi, who had left earlier, Shim Gi-sub casually mentioned that he was dismembering a body. Choi, assuming it was a twisted joke, dismissed the message with a simple, "Stop joking around." He had no idea that the message was horrifyingly real. For 16 hours, Shim continued his gruesome work without hesitation. It wasn't until 1 p.m. the following day that he finally completed the task, flushing most of the flesh down the toilet and meticulously breaking the bones into smaller pieces to fit them into plastic bags. By 2 p.m. on July 9th, he left the motel, carrying the remaining body parts in black plastic bags. Now Shim Gi-sub faced a new problem: what to do with the remains. He walked to a nearby roadside and hailed a taxi, directing it to his home in Idongmyeon, Yongin. Once there, he took the bags containing Kim's bones to a container located next to his house. Inside, he found a wardrobe where he carefully stored the remains. It was then that he posted another chilling message on his Kakao Story account, adding to his previous disturbing confession. "Fly away as ashes. I wonder if you'll ever know that I felt nothing for you. I had no ill feelings, nor did I have any good ones. Hate me if you wish. I respect the courage you showed by staring straight into my eyes until the very end. Thank you for showing me that your gaze didn't frighten me." This message provided a terrifying glimpse into Kim's final moments, her desperate stare in her last seconds of life, and Shim Gi-sub's eerie indifference to it all. While Shim Gi-sub carried out his gruesome crime, Kim's parents grew increasingly worried. They had been trying to reach their daughter throughout the evening, but their calls went unanswered. As the hours passed with no response, concern turned to fear. By morning, after numerous attempts to contact her, they reported her missing to the police. Authorities wasted no time launching an investigation. When they traced Kim's last known whereabouts, they quickly discovered that her final contact had been with Shim Gi-sub. This immediately raised suspicions, as her sudden disappearance after meeting him pointed to a possible crime. As pressure mounted, Shim eventually confessed to his actions to Choi, his longtime friend. Choi, in shock, urged him to turn himself in. At 6:28 p.m. that same day, Shim posted yet another cryptic message on his social media. "Today I feel at ease. I may be hated, but I'll go peacefully." This message suggested that he had made the decision to surrender. After his friend told him to tell everything to the police on July 9th, Shim turned himself in the next day. However, authorities did not view his eventual confession as a voluntary surrender. By then, they had already questioned Kim's acquaintances, and Shim's name had surfaced multiple times. Investigators were closing in on him, and his arrest was imminent. Because of this, his so-called surrender was treated as a standard arrest rather than an act of cooperation. News of the case spread rapidly, leaving the public in disbelief. Even seasoned investigators struggled to comprehend the sheer brutality of Shim Gi-sub's actions. His meticulous dismemberment process, his lack of remorse, and the chilling social media posts painted a picture of a killer unlike any other. As the investigation continued, an even more disturbing truth emerged. Shim Gi-sub had not only mutilated Kim's body, but had also committed acts of necrophilia. This revelation further cemented the horrifying nature of the crime. On December 27, 2013, the court found Shim Gi-sub guilty of all charges and sentenced him to life imprisonment. In addition to this, he was ordered to disclose his personal information for 20 years and wear an electronic ankle monitor for 30 years. However, neither the prosecution nor Shim Gi-seop could accept the ruling. The prosecution argued that the sentence was too lenient compared to the death penalty they had originally sought and filed an appeal. On the other hand, Shim Gi-seop appealed, claiming that the sentence was too harsh and requested reduction. Surprisingly, despite having no remorse or excuses for his crimes, Shim Gi-seop still appealed the sentence. On May 16, 2014, the appellate court upheld the life sentence. However, regarding the disclosure and notification of his personal information, the court reduced the period from 20 years to 10 years, considering that the victim was a minor at the time of the crime. In a way, his sentence was slightly reduced. Eventually, on August 20th, 2014, the Supreme Court finalized the original verdict, confirming the life sentence, the 30-year electronic monitoring order, and the 10-year period for personal information disclosure and notification. With this, Shim Gi-seop was sentenced to life imprisonment, ensuring he would never return to society. However, questions about his crimes still linger in people's minds. Although he has been completely isolated from society with a life sentence, the exact reason behind his crimes remains a mystery. Many believe that someone capable of such crimes must be a psychopath, but psychological evaluations revealed something unexpected. Shim underwent the PCLR test, a widely used tool for assessing psychopathy. To be classified as a psychopath, an individual must score 25 points or higher. Shockingly, Shim Gi-seop scored only 16, far below the threshold. This finding set him apart from infamous South Korean criminals such as Yoo Young-chul, Kang Ho-sun, and Cho Do-sun, all of whom were classified as psychopaths with scores exceeding 25. For many, this was difficult to accept. How could someone who committed such atrocities be considered psychologically normal? Despite Shim Gi-seop's arrest and life sentence, speculation surrounding his motives continues to fuel public intrigue. One of the most unsettling aspects of the case is the manner in which he turned himself in, only after being advised by his friend Choi. This raised suspicions among investigators and the public alike. Was his surrender a calculated move rather than an act of remorse? Some netizens began to theorize that his actions were not purely driven by curiosity or impulse. Instead, they speculated that Shim Gi-seop might have been involved in something far more sinister, potentially linked to organ trafficking or even a secret cannibalistic organization. These theories were fueled by a strange activity on social media, where he had reportedly shared and interacted with content related to human anatomy and obscure forums discussing morbid topics. However, when pressed by the police during interrogation, Shim Gi-seop offered a disturbingly simple explanation for his crimes. I have always been interested in human anatomy. That's why, after killing, I wanted to dissect a body. His matter-of-fact response left investigators baffled. Was this just a cold, calculated excuse, or did it hint at a deeper psychological obsession that had escalated into violence? To this day, the true reasons behind Shim Gi-seop's actions remain unclear. On the surface, Shim Gi-seop appeared to be an ordinary young man, someone who had struggled with life's difficulties, but nothing that could have predicted such a violent outcome. Now, behind bars, he serves his sentence for murder, corpse disposal, and violations of the Special Act on Sexual Violence. What's your perspective on the psychological factors at play here? What truly compelled Shim Gi-seop to commit such an unimaginable crime? Was it a crime of opportunity that escalated beyond his control, or had he meticulously planned it from the start? Our deepest condolences go out to the victim who tragically lost her life in this horrific incident. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.